Hello. It's hard to hear, but if you stop learning about your ancestor when you find out that they're a farmer, you're missing a whole bunch. And if you stop when you find your ancestor in the Freedmen's Bureau Index, again, you're missing a whole bunch. How are you today? It is so nice to have you here. I'm Shamele Jordon, and we have two fantastic quick starts for you today. We have a return special guest, and we have our special regulars, Jim and Michael. And Jim and Michael are going to talk about what was their work specifically. Like I said, a lot of us had ancestors that were farmers, but you might need to go a little deeper than that. And then we have a return of Sharon Gillins, Sharon B. Gillins. She did a quick start last time on the Freedmen's Bureau. And you guys know that there's an index out there. There's two of them. Before, when she got here, there was just one. But now there's two. So she is going to talk to you about after you find them in the Freedmen's Bureau Index. So, how are you? Welcome from YouTube, Facebook, and Philly Cam. I would love to know who's out there, who's watching, whether you're watching us live or whether you're watching in a recording. We'd love to know where you are, and definitely share your genealogy groups because we love genealogy groups. And there's actually some people out there who aren't members of genealogy groups. Yes, believe it or not. So we need to help them out. So definitely share your genealogy group so that you can save some genealogy souls. So enough about that. Let's bring on my buddies. I missed them so much. It's been whole 2 minutes. Where are you? Here we are. Wait, there he is. Jim Beidler, columnist and editor. And we have Michael John Neal. How are you guys?
Very well.
I'm good.
So you guys always come up with some pretty good ones. We're going to talk about occupations again, but it's always a little different twist with you guys. So Michael, you've had like the same occupation, I think, forever. So if you could have any other occupation, like did you ever dream of doing something else besides maybe, dog trainer or dog photographer? Is there anything else that you might
Okay,
want to do?
I never dreamed of dog photographer, but I would probably say just a full time maybe fiction writer might be a good. That would be
Oh.
something I might be mildly interested in, more so than what I did, and something if it's not genealogy related, that would probably be something. Because then you can live in your own reality and hopefully make a little money on it, and in theory, but that doesn't always pan out. That would be the thing that just kind of popped into my head.
So you'd be a fiction writer. You've got lots of stories. So Jim, you are like the master of everything. You've done so many things. Are there any occupations that we might not know about?
Well, one that you're going to know about now that I don't exactly highlight, and that I hope never shows up in any documented record, is my very, very first paid job was picking peaches for Ontolani orchards. And I only lasted 3 weeks at it before there was a layoff. And I wasn't real disappointed that there was a layoff. So.
Notice he said he hoped there was no record of it, but it's now on the internet, and we know nothing on the internet dies.
A record forever and ever. So let's go ahead and get started with our quick start. What was their work specifically? So what are you guys gonna, talk about here?
Well, I'm just going to make the general comment that investigating occupations is also kind of related to putting together that fan club, the friends, associates, and neighbors, because in the associates category are going to be people they worked with, maybe were in a union with, helped each other out as buddies. So the more specifically you can target that occupation rather than something very generic, the better off you may be.
I'm going to have two comments to make, and I hope I remember the second one after the first one. But the first one is it helps you build, quote unquote, an avatar of your ancestor. If you know the occupation fairly specifically, it helps you quickly determine, yeah, that could be him in some other record, or no, that's too inconsistent with what I know about him. The other thing is the more precise a definition of their occupation, I got it, that you have for your ancestor, it may suggest records that he or she could probably be in, or probably would not be in, or would not surprise you if they were not in. If you got a tenant farmer who never owned his property, he's most likely is not going to be buying and selling real estate.
Yeah,
that's just one quick. There's other examples besides that, but that's another reason for trying to narrow it down as best you can.
He's not going to suddenly be the Robert Smith who has died and has this huge giant estate.
Exactly.
So I forgot to say hello. We have so many here, and Paula.
I know.
Moen is like number one from Downing Street in West Deptford. Hey, Paula, I miss seeing you guys. You guys have to let me know when you want to go in person again, maybe in the spring. Hey, Tammy from ATL. It's nice seeing you. Hello, Linda from Sun City, Florida. And Wanda Looney from Alabama, Birmingham. Nice to see you. Birmingham, African American Genealogy Group. And I didn't mention OGS Metro Atlanta Group. And then we have Carol D from Indianapolis, from the Indiana African American Genealogy Group. And there's my Bursley. How are you, Bursley? It's very nice to see you from Rockford, Illinois. We also have, is it John or Jean? Jean Lucas Allen from Collegeville, PA. OGS. What's FQS? OGS, AAGG.
We'll find out.
I know AAGG, but what's FQS, Jean? And then we have my Wayne and Grace Ann. Every time I say your name, I just imagine you guys dancing around. Did you guys dance like Fred Astaire? That's what I see. Hello, Brenita Richardson from OGS Metro Atlanta. All right. So what was their work specifically? So let's go ahead and get started with this quick start with step one, which is look for home sources listing occupation. So you guys gave some home sources. So you want to talk about that while I bring this up?
Well, it can be something as simple as pay stubs. If you have had parents who were kind of anal retentive like mine were, I mean, there was my mom had this big secretary desk, and one of the drawers was seated over to my dad, and I think he kept every pay stub he ever got from his steel worker job at Carpenter Technology.
Wow.
And there could be union membership cards, things of that type that might mention an occupation. Those are probably what Jim mentioned, and those cards are probably the two larger things. But you just never know what something you might have at home might give you some sort of occupational clue.
So, thinking of do you keep them all, Jim? Because it sounds like you have a lot. Did you keep all the stubs, or did you digitize them? What do you do when you have such a collection?
They were well, I haven't needed to disturb them other than kind of look through them and shook my head. Likewise, my mother kept all her check registers since the 1960s.
Okay.
So again, the registers, not the check. If we were dealing with all the actual canceled checks like banks used to send you, then I think those might have made a nice bonfire. But
okay. All right. So you want to look at what's at home first and see what you can get from that. It might have been an annoyance to you when you were younger, but now that information might yield something interesting before you light it up.
And it might be artifacts type things. Like I have my dad's. It's for his 25th anniversary at Cartech. It's like a little statuette of a guy pouring steel. And so that if I didn't know the dates of his service there, I'd know, hey, well, he was at least there a quarter of a century.
I didn't even think of like real usefulness of all those little doohickeys.
You know, because I've
Yeah.
I've got advertising pencils from when my great grandfather sold seed corn with his name and the company logo on it. So it might not be. These things might not be paper things. That might be a clue. It might be something that's not so easy to burn in a bonfire. If you will.
Did you say sea corn?
Seed corn.
Oh, seed corn.
Seed
Oh,
corn, yeah.
okay. All right, let's move on to step 2. After you've looked around the house and you want to gather basic genealogical sources. So we love looking stuff up online. So let's take a look at what Jim has for us. We love records. So talk to us about, hold on, there we go. Is it going to show? There we
It
go.
is. Yeah. Yeah, this is this will from 1786 of one of my ancestors named Friedrich Winter, and it identifies his occupation as a yeoman as he makes his will, and by that point, it had been kind of made into a pretty generic term for a man owning a farm. But earlier on, it would have had more specific representations as far as how much land and maybe even things like feudal obligations. So identifying the time in the term in the context of the time is something you also need to do.
Right, because today it's more of a greeting, "Yo, man, what's up?" But there was a time where it meant. I've been waiting to make that joke.
Or as they say here in Philadelphia, "Yo, I'm talking to you."
But before or while Shamel's going to the next slide, a couple documents that we didn't put up as illustrations, but most people are familiar with those, would be birth certificates and death certificates are good places to get occupations as well. Obviously, an infant doesn't have an occupation, but the father's occupation is often listed. Mother's, depending upon the era, may not be. But those are two good places more recently to get those kind of occupations.
Yep. Yeah, and then the second example here, this is from an 1807 tax list, Bethel Township, Dauphin County, now Lebanon County. And as many of the tax lists are broken down for Pennsylvania at the time, they have a freeholders list, they have a tenants or inmates list, and then they have a single freeman list. And this one is of the tenants. These are people who have enough personal property to be taxed, but don't have the benefit of enough land to do a more general property tax. And we're highlighting here a guy named Henry Bottenhorn or Bodenhorn, who is identified as a weaver and given kind of a minimal assessment as far as the value of his occupation and output. And he's an ancestor of a former legacy tree genealogist colleague of mine, Katie Barnes, who I've been trying to help her solve the mystery. He allegedly had loads of fancy rugs that he wove, and first we were just trying to identify Henry's father and so forth. And then Katie said, "Oh, well, can't we find one of the rugs that he did?" I'm like, "Oh man, you're really up the ante here." But and the only other thing I'd say about this is a lot of times weaver was not a high status occupation, and a lot of times they might be omitted from tax lists in this time period.
So maybe he was. So what are these columns up at the top?
Yeah, they are of different types of personal property that was subject to taxation, like horses and horned cattle, and these are the points of taxation of personal property.
Nice, nice. So you get that's a more clearer picture of what
Yeah,
the ancestor might have had.
exactly.
Love that. And this was from 1786, 89.
This is 1807. The will
Oh,
was from
1807.
1786.
Okay. Love
Yep.
that. And here we have a deed.
Yeah,
I
this is.
love the writing on this. The penmanship is
Well, if you
beautiful.
really like it, I have some you can transcribe. This is from Middlesex County, Massachusetts, and one of the and again, and this is, I think it's about it's mid 1700s. I don't think I put the year on the bottom, but one of the reasons the occupations are listed in this case is it helps to distinguish one individual of the same name from a different one, and the sergeant man, I think, is a cordwainer, and the individual to whom he's selling it is a tanner. So it's a way to help
Wow.
distinguish individuals of the same name. City directories would also give you occupations as well. I don't think we have an illustration of that. That's another good um, idea. But sometimes we have difficulty, especially in the era of Jim's record and in the era of this one, figuring out what the occupations are. Tax list and deeds and wills, those are good places to get at that because the occupation wouldn't always be listed, but sometimes it would be given there, and it's helpful to distinguish same named individuals in addition to other good things to know about
What's
the individual.
what's a cordwainer?
It's involved in making shoes because I just looked it up.
Oh.
It does not mean they wrap cords around something all day. Um,
You could see the mental picture that we're
yes.
putting together. So, but yeah, I just to riff off of Michael's point. Yeah, I especially among one example in the Mennonite Hare or Her family in Lancaster County. Oh my goodness, they of course have so many Johns, but also other names. Even on tombstones, they are putting in the occupation to differentiate John Hare Mason versus John Hare uh, um, blacksmith. Uh, so yeah, you can even find it on tombstones.
That's nice. That's very helpful. So we have another one here. Let's see. I think we do. I love
Now,
inventories.
this
Inventories are
this
life.
is a this is a situation where the occupation is not specifically stated, but there are certain areas of the country the occupations are not stated. This is from Hancock County, Illinois, where I don't think I've ever seen a deed that listed somebody's occupation. Or things like that. And this dude doesn't appear in any federal census records because of when he emigrated and when he died. But the inventory of his estate, on the surface, you might think he's an alcoholic. There's
You
20
and
gallon,
Jim's ancestor.
yeah.
What?
There's, but there's 20 gallons of cherry brandy, quite a bit of rye whiskey, 10 gallons of port wine, and whatever else there. And you look at the rest of that, and it kind of makes you wonder. And this is just a snippet of what's in the inventory. He's either got a tavern or a general store, or maybe even a combination of both. Nowhere is his occupation stated in any record because of when he died and what records were kept. But the inventory is very suggestive of what
Yes, Steve. Yeah.
of what he did. And for a lot of individuals, if they had enough property to go through probate, you can look at the inventory of the estate and sometimes get a rough idea of what their occupation might have been. And
So
if you aren't sure, or if you're thinking maybe you're not concluding correctly, look at other inventories from the same time to see how much thread and whatever else they
how much
had.
brandy each house? So what's the average amount
Exactly,
of brandy
exactly.
per
Do
household?
other inventories have this much brandy on hand? And he's got $6 of chewing tobacco, $6 in cigars, and he's got matches and all this kind of thing inventoried out, which is suggestive of something. But if you're uncertain, look at others from the same time period to kind of get a feel for, is yours atypical, or is that what everybody at that location had?
So in addition to, looking for records that, are specific, you want to be able to also infer
Exactly.
occupations. I
Exactly.
love that. I love that. So let's see. Did we have, I don't know if this one is for this, the instructions, or is that for another step, Michael?
This will work for this step too. We can
Okay, let's show.
since it's next. This is from the instructions for the 1870 census. I There's quite a few instructions. The illustration only talks about housekeeper versus keeping house. Um, but there was a distinction, and I'm looking at to make sure I don't misspeak. Um, a housekeeper is someone who received a wage. Keeping house is for someone who did not. They were keeping house for their own immediate family. And so there was a specific way those were supposed to be listed in the census. And so, if you see everybody keeping house, but when it says housekeeper, then that's a different sort of a thing going on. They were working outside the home. But this also goes in terms of people. If you read through it, we're going to mention farmers a little bit later. I think there's, farmers, farm laborers, and
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. And those get into distinctions in terms of what records they might appear in. But if you see an occupation in a specific census year and you're not certain how it should be interpreted, go back and look at the directions, because the directions are pretty specific about. I don't use the word manufacturer if they're not the owner of the facility. If they're
Mm-hmm.
working as a guy on the floor, don't list him as the manufacturer. The occupation should indicate whatever he's making, but don't use that word, because that word is supposed to be used for the owner of the facility, not for somebody working on the floor.
So I'm not sure if they would have this in the instruction, but my great grandmom was a person who stayed at someone's home Monday through Friday, and then she was at home during the weekend. And I have some census years where we can't find her. So where were they instructed to list the housekeepers? Were the housekeepers supposed to be if you know this? I'm just
I
throwing it
well,
at anybody who might know the
I
answer to
think they were supposed, if they were living there most of the week, I would think they would. It kind of depends on where their residence was. My grandmother did that in 1930, but she's enumerated twice. She's enumerated with her parents. She'd have been about 20 years old.
that.
She's enumerated with her parents in the census, and she's also enumerated in the household where she worked as a hired girl as
Ah,
well. And I think it was, if they're, I'm kind of guessing where they were at the majority of the time. And I'm not certain. The instructions might say, or they might not say, to be honest with you. And again, without going into all the details of the instructions, there was always some discretion in terms of what the census taker did. There was always census takers who didn't know what they were doing, and there were always people that gave semi-correct answers or didn't understand the question and how it
right,
should be interpreted.
right. So you look at basic genealogical resources. I think we kind of explore records specific to their type of work. So, what does that mean? Give us example.
Well, for example, are there any journals, from stores in that area that they would have gone to for supplies, specific to their occupation? The a Recently, I got interested in my great great grandfather, one of them, named Wellington Mockmer, uh, who shows up in the U.S. Census always as a farmer, but I knew from credible family stories that he was also a stone and concrete mason. As a matter of fact, what he had told my mother was that he had laid the foundation of the house that I live in 50 years before he bought it as his own. Now you could say, is this just charming family lore?
Mhm.
But in the newspapers, there are many listings of the different jobs that he's putting in a sidewalk for such and such person. He has done a foundation for somebody else in those great little who's visiting who columns in the old
I
newspapers.
love those little
Yeah,
columns.
yeah.
A
So they
couple.
can go good.
I was going to say a couple other things that come to mind. Um, in terms of the journals or magazines or whatever, Google Books has a variety of things that have been digitized. I got an individual who was involved in Davenport, Iowa. He worked in a I forget just what he did, but he worked in a factory, and he was a member of the union. And there was a newsletter they put out, and a couple of times his name appears in there for one reason or another. So those kind of journals, occupational journals, you might think my people would never be in there, but you don't know that. I've got individuals that were members, they were farmers, they were involved in the local farm bureau, and in the 1920s and 1930s, there's advertisements. They're selling chickens, they're selling eggs, they wanted to sell their whatever their boiler in the basement because they were building a new house. Things like that. If you're we didn't mention ministers, but if you see the individuals a minister, then there might be denominational things, or there might even be denominational journals or magazines that were published where your person might be mentioned. But never assume just because they worked a typical run-of-the-mill job, they might not be in one of these journals. They might have been involved in the local union or whatever in some significant way, and because of that, their name might appear every so often in some journal or magazine. Google Books is one place to start looking for those things. It's not the only place, but it's one place to start looking for some of those things.
And one thing that I like you were saying, they might have just listed as a farmer, but they might have been, odd fellows, and they might have been a part of all kinds of different groups and stuff. So, and within those groups, they might have shared more detail about their specific work as
Right.
opposed to just I'm a farmer. So yeah, great stuff. Great stuff. Jim, what was I gonna? Sorry. It just went. Woo, 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 woo.
And if you do lose your train of thought and discover somebody worked for the railroad, keep in mind that was a good segue there.
Thank you.
Keep in mind, there are pension records if they were working for the railroad after a certain point in time. I was my people worked for the railroads 1870s or so, and well before any type of, they're not any of those kinds of records. But if it's later after 1900, there's a reasonable chance they appear in a pension record. And that would be something you might want to take a look at and see if you could find as well.
And then there's step 4, which is to learn about social history. And that's definitely, you were talking about Google Books earlier. That's a great place for that. Would you agree?
Yeah, that's a good place to start. Learning about if they were farmers, what were common agricultural practices in the time period that you're looking at. You can find journals about farming. You can find medical journals and all kinds of things. Google Books is a place to start for that. It's not the only place to get that. You might even find academic articles that were written about medical practices in whatever county in Pennsylvania in 1870 because someone did their dissertation on that. And so you may find references there that give you a little bit of background information.
And you might be starting with a more general history book of a family or whatever. Read the footnotes. Look at the footnotes, endnotes, bibliography for the type of specific books and theses and everything that Michael's talking about. Those are your gold mine.
Right, because if you do find one of these, you want to read it for the content. We're not saying don't read it for the content, but don't just ignore, I don't need those footnotes at the end. That reminds me of high school composition. You want to look at those footnotes and the endnotes or bibliography or whatever it's referred to, because there's probably additional reading material there that could give you some additional insight as well.
Yep.
And I was just looking at my some notes about, genealogy and, people who inspire me. And one thing that Dr. Debbie says is that you need to learn about the people. We spend so much time chasing records. She said you need to learn about the people, and learning about the people will help you to find the records. And so, isn't that beautiful? We got to bring Dr. Debbie back on the show. So Kathy Wiseman said that she had a cousin that was also listed twice in the census. She was a nurse at a hospital. So wow, they put her at the hospital and at home. That's pretty interesting.
Another neat way to learn more about your ancestors' occupation and how they practiced it and things of that type is to go through one of those estate inventories and determine what all those things are. Now, obviously, it shouldn't take you a lot of time to figure out what rye whiskey and port wine are. But if there are other, implements they use, tools of the trade and things of that type, those are things to find out just what just what was that?
And
And
the people
sometimes,
that they were trading with.
right,
Yeah.
just going through and doing those things can be a history lesson in and of itself.
That sounds like a quick start, living the estate record, you know? Let's look at step 5. Then you want to document your findings. Guys, I enjoyed you got your occupation talk. Let's look at our full quick start. What was their work specifically? Step 1, look for home sources listing occupation. Step 2, gather basic genealogical sources. Step 3, explore records specific to their type of work. Step 4, learn about social history. Yes, you're going to have to read some. Step 5 is then to document your findings. So thank you so much. I thoroughly enjoyed that. I hope you guys enjoyed it too. Please put your questions in the comments and we'll answer those if we'll have the time. All right, guys, thank you so much. I enjoyed that.
Thanks.
See you on the other
On the
side.
other side.
Hello. Did you guys enjoy that? I love talking about occupations. I think we might be talking about it a little more, but let me split the show. All right, let's get ready to bring my buddy on, Sharon Gillins. I'm not even going to do a whole big intro on you, Sharon, but guess what? We have something new that I don't think you did when you were first a guest.
Okay.
That
What was
is,
that?
we would love to hear your 1-minute genealogy story, how you got started and when you knew you were hooked.
Okay. All right. So I grew up in Texas, but my paternal line is in Louisiana. We are all things Louisiana. And so growing up, I didn't get a chance to go to Louisiana that much, but I loved everything about it. The food, my grandparents, I loved hearing them talk about it and everything. So it was my dad who used to go to the family reunions. And by the time I was old enough to go, I was already away at college. So, but I always had great interest in it. So one time I came home from school and he had been to a family reunion and had taken notes on a little sheet of paper that was something else. He just took this paper and wrote on it, hand wrote our family tree on it, and he gave it to me. I still have that family tree that he hand wrote and gave to me. And when he passed away, I just felt like I was appointed. I literally felt like I was tapped on the shoulder and told, it's you. You're the one. You're responsible now. And so I just started digging and joined a genealogical society, in San Diego. And the rest is history. I've been doing it ever since. Now I'm going on 30 years. So it
That
is
is
a passion.
such an amazing story. I love that. One day I want to see that little I want to see that
Yes,
one day.
yeah, I still have it. It's a treasure. That
It
little piece of
really
paper is a treasure.
is.
Written
I
up the side and all around. In
he
his
was getting it in for his baby girl. He was
yeah, for his baby girl. That's it. That's it.
So, as everyone probably is well aware of, Sharon and I have a huge love of the Freedmen's Bureau.
Huge.
And Sharon came up with a fabulous quick start. And the quick start is after you find them in the Freedmen's Bureau Index. So, Sharon, talk to us about, the Freedmen's Bureau Index.
Well, I started researching the Freedmen's Bureau records long before there was any ability to even digitize the records. So I started off in microfilm and original records. So my love of the record goes way back. But as we come forward in time, people have become more accustomed to being able to find a box to put the name in the box, and up so many wonderful things about your ancestors. And a lot of times the commercial vendors promote it that way. They say, oh, just put it in there and
It's
you just
so easy.
all this stuff is gonna come up. Well, it doesn't really work that way. But now we do have several very good resources that are indexed. One is at familysearch.org. And the other and most recent one is at Ancestry.com. And they have taken the digitized records and they have indexed them and made them available to people free. So that has just exploded the interest, just exploded the interest in this. And so without any background in the Freedmen's Bureau of Records, many people are going to Ancestry.com for the first time and putting their ancestor's name in the index box. And some people are finding things and some people are not. And so I wanted to touch on some processes that might happen. Even if you do find them, it's not the end. This is just the beginning of your search.
So don't be sad if you didn't find them, because
No.
they could still be in there, right? That's what you're saying?
That is absolutely what I'm saying. And since I have been researching these records for so long, I already had ancestor information that I could cross-check with the index. So I took records that I had in my hand and I used those names and put them in the index. Sometimes they came up, sometimes they didn't.
So we're going to talk about, let's get to show these records and talk about it. So let's go to step one.
All right.
Step one is to find a person in the index. I love the slide that you created showing the benefits and limitations of indexes. This is so important. Oh my gosh. So
well, you have to think about the fact that we were in a different time. These records were created at a different time. So the benefits, of course, is they're easy, they're typewritten, it's easy to read, it's fast, it's broad, you get these immediate results. Woo. And there are many more search possibilities. But the reality is there are also limitations, like variations in spelling, inconsistent use of surnames. People changed their surnames, transcription errors, and omissions. So all of these are reasons why you can use the index, definitely so, but don't be discouraged and downtrodden if you don't immediately find your person coming up in an indexed search. So find them though.
So find them. Look for them.
They're in there, and I love it. You gave me this. You have to go into the records with the attitude that my people are in there, and that's yours. And I have adopted it, and I love that.
I love it.
Your people are in there.
They're in there. So let's now step two. You found them.
You found
somebody. You need to confirm their identity. So how do you go about that?
Okay, well, there are many people who have similar names. And so you have to make sure that your person is the one that is coming up. So if you're looking for your person in 1867, you should have already found them and researched them from 1940 to 1870, so that you have more than a name about them. You have a profile of them. You know some things about them that you can use as a basis for comparison. Here's an example. This is a man named William Grooms. I don't know Mr. Grooms, so I don't know anything about him. And we have multiple William Grooms came up from an index search. Which one is the William Grooms that I might have been searching for? You want to make a comparison. Are they the same age? Is it in the same location? Are the people around them the same people that you might be looking for? And so these are all the kinds of baseline information that you use as data to compare with the one. So you might have to go through the list and make a decision about that. So once you have confirmed their identity, now you have to determine what publication is in. And if you're doing an index search on Family Search, you have to look above and below to find some information out. Up at the top, it will actually tell you the microfilm number and even the roll number that you are searching in. The narrow microfilm number is called the M number, and then the number beside that is number 25. That means it's on roll 25. Mm-hmm. So you're going to need that information later, so make note of it. And then if you look down at the bottom, you can see how many images are actually on this roll. And if you see in this case, this image is number 534 of 562 images. That tells you the relative location of it on a microfilm roll. Even if even though it's digitized, it remains in the same order that the National Archives put it in from the beginning. The same order, the same content, everything the same. It has just been digitized. So use all the clues, because sometimes there might be 2,000 images on one. So look down at the bottom and see what is the image number. Look at the top and find the M number and the roll number, because you're going to need it in subsequent steps.
So let's take a step back and talk about when you said determine which publication. And I have FO for field office, AC for assistant commissioner, HQ for headquarters. Can you talk a little bit more specifically about what those each are?
Yes, those are the levels of records that were created in the Freedmen's Bureau. The Freedmen's Bureau was a hierarchy. It was a military hierarchy. The headquarters was in Washington, D.C. That's HQ. So, and then below that was the AC, the assistant commissioner at the state level. And then the field office was at the very local level. The information that most genealogists and family history researchers are looking for is going to be down at those field office levels, because that's where the field agent was. And the field agents were in contact, direct contact with the refugees as well as the freedmen. Now, I want you to realize that, yes, lots of information is in there about Black people, freedmen, but there's also information about white refugees in there. So this is a record group. This is an American record group that people from the South can benefit from, whether they are Black and white. So you have to know whether you're looking at the field office records or the assistant commissioner's records. Now, in a hierarchy, the records are generated at the lowest level, the field office level. Then they're consolidated and filed up the chain of command. And they become more statistical and data-driven as they go up higher. By the time they get to the headquarters, there's no information in there about your ancestors. But at the field office level and at the assistant commissioner level, you can find name-specific information, and you want to know that, because you have to know that when you go to access the finding aid for this, so you can know exactly what you're looking at in the records.
Okay, so you were saying, I'm going to just share this again. You were saying that what we were looking at, you're basically determining what the publication is so that you can, and the roll number. And so once we have that, you say we should now go to the next step.
And discover the record context. What is the publication that it was created in? Because even though we see the name at the top, we don't really know, well, what office is it in? What are they talking about? It may not even tell you whether it's at a field office level when it comes up. So now you have to find that out. You have to use the information on that screen at Ancestry to determine the microfilm number, the M number, and the roll number, because now you're going to download the descriptive pamphlet. The descriptive pamphlet is key. It's key because it's your finding aid to the contents of the record.
So it's kind of like I always call it like the table of contents. It kind of gives you history, and then it says on this roll, first thing you're going to see is this, and then you're going to see that, and then you're going to see that. It's kind of like your little Bible of all that's for your particular state.
That's absolutely true. And the descriptive pamphlet is so important that every microfilm roll in the Freedmen's Bureau starts with the descriptive pamphlet. So if you scroll all the way back to image 1, you're going to find the descriptive pamphlet that starts out with the history of the Bureau overall, the history of the Bureau and the state of your research. And then it will give you those contents of each roll that's in the Bureau for the field office or the assistant commissioner state office, or even the headquarters. In this case, we learned from that record that it was M1905, and that is the field office records in the state of Louisiana. And we learned that it was roll 25. So on roll 25, it starts with the report of rations issued. And there's lots of stuff before you get to the end. And remember, we learned that it was close to the end.
To the end.
So we got down to the end right before record 20, roll 26, and you see there is a register of patients. And as we look back at Mr. Groom's that information, he had diarrhea.
Oh, Mr. Grooms.
Yes.
Oh, Mr. Grooms. Let's see.
There he is. Go forward one.
I'll go forward one.
There it is on the right-hand side.
Mr. Grooms.
His disease was diarrhea. So
The
now
whole month, Mr. Grooms.
context of this record was that this is a register of patients. A register of patients. And as we learn more by reading that descriptive pamphlet, the finding aid, the table of contents, it will tell you what is the scope of the records, what is the date scope of the records, where is it located, where is this hospital located. He was admitted to the hospital. And so you want to use every bit of information in the record in combination with the descriptive pamphlet to come up with information that's going to inform your research. And if we look closer, here it is. This is a single volume register of patients between 1865 and 1869. It's arranged chronologically by the date of admissions, and it is numbered. And that is exactly what we find with Mr. Grooms.
So we know where Mr. Grooms was.
We know where he was. He was in the hospital.
Yeah.
Bless his heart.
Oh, with his diarrhea. Oh, Mr. Grooms.
That's hard. That's hard duty in 1867. You know, that's really
probably
hard.
Pretty common.
Yes, it probably was. It was, in fact. And you know, you could succumb to it. It was a serious illness. Serious.
So basically, we now, we know that we have Mr. Grooms, that he was a patient, and we have the descriptive pamphlet, all of that. What do we do? You said, download it. We know where it is. So what do we do now? We have that one record.
This is the beginning of what you can find. You are now extracting every tidbit of information out of that record that you can, because it will lead you to other records. You want to find out if he's in the hospital in New Orleans. You want to find out what parishes or what field offices are serviced by that hospital. And that means now you go to those field offices to continue the search. Maybe it didn't come the index search, but now you go to those field offices and any other records that are associated with hospital records and field office records to continue the search. Now, don't be discouraged if you don't find anything else, or if you don't find that person anyway, because the context that you find by a page search is so rich, so important to your research. It will tell you so much about the people around, and even if it's not your person that you're looking for, you learn so much by the context and what you're learning about the people in there. Because if the neighbors are going through it, your people is going through it too. Right. So if there's an outbreak of yellow fever, your people are affected by that.
Yeah. And that's what we always say, we just said this in the last quick start, that social context was important, learning what's going on. And so in the Freedmen's Bureau records, the field office records, the monthly reports, I love sitting and reading those monthly reports. That kind of fills in and tells what's going on. That's, of course, after you've searched for your people.
Yes. And so there is exactly what I was talking about. And when Michael said that, I was cheering.
Yeah.
Because it's
don't say that too. Don't Don't say you were cheering Michael too often. Don't do that.
Well, you do have to learn about the area, the social context. And so those records that the field agents are generating are very personal records, and they are written from a first person's point of view in direct contact with the people who are living in the area.
Yeah.
And so in some of them, they read like a little novel.
Yes.
And, it's like the Real Housewives of Reconstruction. Because they include all kinds of things.
It is.
Cheating and drunkenness, and in addition to much more serious things as well, like disease and outrages and violence. But it is very important to learn the context in which the ancestors were living.
I enjoyed when they, because of course, enslaved people, it wasn't legal for them to get married. And so in different areas, they were doing different things. And I think some areas they made announcements. They said, whoever you're with, that's who we're going to document you as being married to. And they had the women coming up there saying, I'm not married to him. It was just with him during slavery, but now
they made me be with him.
I'm free. I'm not just free. I'm free and free.
And I'm free to choose.
Master said I was just chilling with him for Master's sake, but
right. This was all for increase. This was not for love. I'm married for love.
I'm gonna go get me a lover man now. All right, so you're going to use the descriptive pamphlet to create a research plan, and then you're going to go have more fun researching the records.
Get in there and research the records. And don't be so hung up about finding your people, because you can accidentally find your person just by a page-by-page search. So love the page-by-page search, because the unexpected is in that page-by-page search. And Smithsonian Online Virtual Archive, SOVA, has created this beautiful reorganization. No, it's not a reorganization. I take that back. It's a content management system where they have created a hierarchy that enables you to get down, they've linked it so that you can link to the records at a lower level. You can drill down in like you're going through an outline, and you can get closer to the records that you are actually looking for. So it makes your navigation so much easier. And I really advise everyone to use all the tools available to you. Use the index record search at Ancestry as a starting point. Then use that as a jumping off point to go into the fully indexed, into the fully reorganized content management system at Smithsonian Online Virtual Archives. Consult Family Search, because they have a wonderful wiki, and it tells you so much about the records and how to access the records. And there's every day more and more resources being made available to you to help you get to your own ancestors or your research subjects that are in there. Your people are in there.
They are in there, like Prego. You know it's in there. It's a little Italian in every bottle of Prego.
It's in there. It's in there.
So you're researching the records, and then of course you want to document your findings.
Document your findings. This is so important, and it's a step that most of us really, we get so excited once we find something that we forget to document our findings. We also forget to document negative findings, because negative findings are findings as well. If you didn't find something, you should document that, because it will keep you from traveling over the same record over and over again. It will keep you organized. And then what you did find should include definitely the location, because you're going to have to go back to it.
Yep.
Now that they are digitized, you can do an URL, You can also tell the image number so that you can quickly go back to it when you want to re-examine that record. You also want to include your thoughts about it. You might have been thinking about, okay, well, this could be my William Grooms, but I'm suspicious because it doesn't, the age is off or what have you. You want to put all that down because you have many ancestors and you're going to be researching many different people. And by the time you go back to it 3 months later, you have forgotten. But if you keep good records, you document where you've been, what you found, what you're thinking, what you were thinking at the time, you can save yourself a lot of heartache and give yourself a jumping off point to analyze. Because in the end, it's not just about finding the information, it's about analyzing
it. We're not just document collectors.
No, we're not document collectors, because now you have to analyze the information that you found, put it within how can we say, put it in a context of your whole entire family and all the findings, and then write it up so that it makes sense. Because your children and your grandchildren are not going to wade through all of your pieces of
paper
and
know what all of that is.
But if you write it up and analyze it and give it to them in a narrative form with images to illustrate what you found, that they will treasure.
I love that, Sharon. Thank you for this quick start. Let's go through the steps again. So after you find them in the Freedmen's Bureau Index, remember there's 2 of them, hit them both.
Well,
Step 1, find a person in the index. Step 2, confirm their identity. Make sure it's your William Grooms. Step 3, determine the publication. Is it field office, assistant commissioner, or headquarters? Step 4, download the DP and create a research plan. Step 5, research the records. And step 6, document your findings.
yes.
Thank you so much, Sharon. Let's bring Michael and Jim back. So guys, we're talking about occupations. So you guys have any interesting ancestral occupations? I know that my grandma had the coolest occupation. And I haven't been able to document it yet because I don't know where to get the police records. My grandma was a numbers runner, so I think that was
mine was too. She was too. But I found a really interesting occupation in the records of the Freedmen's Bureau. There was a woman who was a suckler. She was a first-class worker, and she was a suckler.
What's a suckler?
She fed the babies.
Oh, wow. I need to see that record.
I have that record.
Jim, Michael, we have 1 minute less.
Mine pales in comparison. The only, it's really kind of hard to follow up on that, but I have one who was in northern Germany. They had the windmills, not Holland, but right next to it. And he was a master mechanic on the windmills. He went from one town to another, and he repaired the windmills.
Jim?
I don't have one of my own, but a client I used to have, his ancestry was a locksmith. But now what's special about that? Well, he was accused of breaking into the Lord's castle in Germany. So
thank you, guys. Thank you, Sharon. Jim,
thank you.
Have a great day.